And staff, of course. Okay, could we get Debbie to take us through the prayer, please?
O God, our Creator, bless us as we gather today for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we will work for the good of our community and help all your people. Teach us to be generous in our outlook, courageous in face of difficulty, and wise in our decisions. We ask this grace through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Right. No apologies today. Notices. The only notice I have, there is a submitter who is not here. Oh, sorry, Mr. Moore, you would have moved. 3 o'clock. Okay. You need to leave at 3 o'clock. Okay. Thank you. One of our submitters, Terry, and I've just put a line through his name. Hang on, where's Kelly? Terry Kelly is unable to make it today as a submitter to the hearing. What else was the only other notice I had is we'll deal with the minutes at the council meeting next week. Previous minutes. Okay, conflict of interest declarations. There being none, let's move into the decision item. I'll hand it over to the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, councillors. This item, it really introduces your consideration of all the submissions that have been received as part of the special consultative process on a proposed council investment in the Ruataniwha water storage dam. The process is really set out in paragraphs 4 to 8, the special consultative procedure, and this is what has been followed, which council had undertaken to do, and this has been followed since beginning of May. We've been involved in this process. I think a couple of key points really to make is that as part of a special consultative process, the preferred option has to be identified, and so that went out as part of the statement of proposal, with council expressing a preferred option to invest up to $80 million in the scheme. As part of the public engagement, there was quite extensive public engagement carried out over a fairly intensive period, but it was important that people be given enough time to hear public presentations and then to be able to consider those and still make submissions. So, as I said, it was a very intensive 7 to 10 days in which we undertook 17 public meetings, as well as in the weekend in between that had a constant present at the Better Home and Living show. And so there's some statistics in the paper that outline the response that we had at those meetings. In addition to that, we had also sent out an email to all stakeholders on our database, offering them the opportunity to have a presentation from council representatives on this issue, and we were invited by Napier City Council, Central Hawke's Bay District Council and Wairoa District Council at various times, and those were undertaken by staff and or councillors. We met with some of the team from Mr Apple. A presentation was made to Grey Power as well as Central Hawke's Bay businesswomen, federated farmers, and as I said, the Home and Living Expo, where there was certainly a number of people stopped and watched the video and asked some questions. So in terms of the budget, the total budget has come in at just under $84,600, and that covered, as it's set out in paragraph 26, that covered a number of different forms of engagement, from a brochure that went to every household in Hawke's Bay, through to our web engagement and, as I said, the social media advertising and Better Home and Living Expo. We've received just under 200 submissions, and 37 people have asked to speak to you to verbally present those in addition to the written material that they've submitted. So this next day and a bit is really giving those people the opportunity to do that, and So we're recommending that for this particular paper that you formally receive all the written submissions, and also obviously hear those that are presented to you in the next 2 days. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Excuse me. Any questions? Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm probably not relevant to what we're going to be doing over the next 2 days, Liz, but I just look at number 12 on your paper, and this is in regard to the Deloitte's independent analysis. And thank you for allowing me, since I missed the presentation that they made on the 28th, to have a chat with them, and I also watched the webcast. They are actually going to make, as I understand it, and as they understand it, going to make a third presentation to us once some more of the financial details are more clear. So that's actually not quite correct, because we haven't received the final version of the...
Sorry, so they have given us a final report on the business case that HBRC has presented to us. What we're going to ask them to do at some point in the future is sort of a new process, and it will we will ask them to look at when there's more final information known, particularly around the investment structure and so forth. We'll ask them just to really cross-check that against their other assumptions. So it is slightly a different. It will be a separate process. As far as we're concerned, they've completed their work with us at the moment.
Okay, and just one other thing. 28, we're asked to consider the submissions as well as written submissions and staff responses to submissions. I couldn't find any attachment with staff responses to the submissions in these papers here.
No, you're correct. There aren't any staff responses, so you can. There aren't. This is informing your decision that'll be made next week. So my apology, that shouldn't have been there.
Further questions?
Councillor Barker.
On the Deloitte's review of the business case, one of the key elements of it was the stress test applied on the take-up of water. And that was based on what's been loosely called a single nutriment model, that the tuki could have elevated levels of nitrogen, the level of toxicity, but would be constrained on phosphorus. We now have a Board of Inquiry decision which has a loosely called two nutriment model, constrained levels of phosphorus and this dissolved inorganic nitrogen set at a maximum of 0.08. It would seem to me that the second has quite significant implications. You, as the Chair, have made that very clear, so has the Chair of HBRC. And what I was wondering was, when the analysis comes back to us, will the analysis be based on the new Board of Inquiry decision, the announced Board of Inquiry decision? Because if it's not, then the stress test is wrong, because the assumptions with it are incorrect. And I think we can only receive that when we've had the updated stress test on that. Because we need to know, part of this model relies on people taking up water, and the assumption, this has been based, there's a lot of work done on this, assuming that it was going to be, elevated levels of nitrogen. Now it's not. So therefore the outcome will be quite different. So I need to be assured that we're going to have that part of the equation reworked.
The stress test, as you put it, the uptake, is covered by the conditions precedent. So there will be no final scheme if there isn't the uptake, and that will be determined by the potential water users based on the Board of Inquiry final decision. And obviously the uptake will be part of the final analysis that Deloitte do when they do their additional report back to us.
I think you're missing my point here. Maybe I'm not explaining it properly. But we've got 4 conditions precedent. I accept that. That nothing moves until we've got guaranteed sale and supply of 40 million cubic metres. But our numbers about the future are based on assumptions about the rate of uptake farmers will connect to the water. And those assumptions were based on the original application, which had constraints on phosphorus but elevated levels of nitrogen. And so how farmers would react to that is probably different than what it will be if its nitrogen levels are fixed at 0.8. Now, this is very clearly the case, because we have had the chair of HBRC in front of us here saying that at that level the dam is unworkable. We've had yourself, the chair, saying at 0.8, switch out the lights in Central Hawke's Bay. So we can't have a model in front of us which is based on a false assumption. So I'm asking that when we go back and have a look at these numbers, that the model that we get presented to us, the business case, has to have the updated expectation of take-up at that level. Without it, the model is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, don't like to keep referring back to conditions precedent, but the very first one will be determining whether or not there's workable resource consent. So that's going to be an integral part of any flow-on effect, which will affect farmer uptake, etc., etc. So yeah, I understand and agree exactly with your point.
Have that part reworked.
Yes. Yep.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. My apologies, but I brought the wrong file in from the car. If you'll excuse me to go and get the right one.
You're not bringing the car in? No.
I'll try not to.
Okay, that's fine. There might be another, or you'll have writing in your one. Okay, there might be another sediment. Right, okay, any other questions? Councillor Scott.
The recommendation, which is to receive and consider the submission and hear those that are presented in person.
Sure, okay. We have a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Bevan. You wish to speak further?
No.
Further speakers? I'll put that motion then and we'll start the hearing. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you.
Just before we ask for the first submitter to come up, I noted going through these submissions that there are two here where we've got the front page, but we don't actually have a submission that expresses a view. And I think we should just note for the record, I understand from Leanne she's been back to try and get the submission, but hasn't had a response. So I think for completeness, we should just note the submissions 110 and 111 from Caroline and Michael Ritson-Thomas.
I would note that they've got the same surname and they appear to have the same submission. Swank.
Without a submission.
This is called matrimonial harmony.
Couldn't possibly comment, no doubt. Okay, right. Let's start the hearing then, and I'd like to ask Mr. Ian McIntosh if he's here. Good morning, sir.